Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode. That would be episode 77 of the Struggling Hunters podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening or watching, whatever it is platform you happen to be participating on. We appreciate it and would like to say thanks again for all the comments out there and all the new people that have subscribed over the last little bit. We really appreciate it. And, we hope we are worth your time. You get some type of value out of it, whether it's, something you haven't thought of, or maybe something to laugh at, or, something to help you pass the time, whatever it is. We're just glad you're here. And, kind of give you a little background on this, on this episode 77, we're going to be talking about lessons learned in the, I guess, the archery elk season in 2021, and in a way that as the podcast is named The Struggling Hunters, so in a way this is struggles that we maybe have gone through this year, more in the field than out of the field. And hopefully, it's something you guys have maybe struggled with. And if it is, give us a comment. Tell us what you've thought, or maybe a situation you got into that where you learned something, or how you remembered, how do you remember to do something when you're in the woods? Because I think one of the things that me and Eric has done was we tried to prep ourselves for this past season with things that we were going to try to do better at. And I'll say for myself, that I went in thinking I had a plan, and I felt myself slipping into other tendencies that I had, or habits, I guess I should say, that I've formed over the years, that I'd slip into when things probably weren't going as well as I wanted them to. And so that's, what me and Eric are trying to do is better ourselves as hunters, and, keep pushing through the struggles to become better. So like I said, we'll just go ahead and dive in to this podcast. But first, if you've been listening to our other podcasts, we've discussed the Fred Bear's 10 Commandments. And so we've done the first two, and I believe we're on commandment number 3 of Fred Bear. So, and we just, it's kind of the end of the season, so we'll probably pull these back out when next season comes up, because there's there's some awesome commandments in here that really give you a lot to think about to become a better hunter. Like, they're very basic, and I think that they're awesome. So I guess I've been talking. So you want to read number 3, Eric?
Yeah, thanks, Joe, for letting me cut in.
You're welcome. We do have Eric here with us. It isn't just the Joe show today.
yeah, it almost sounded like a single man podcast today. No, man. Matter of fact, that was pretty impressive, though. I got to hand it to you. You went on for, I don't know how long you went on for, but it was a good little minute, and so you did pretty good. So I just got to sit here and look pretty. So, but let me get on to Fred Bear's commandments, and yeah, like Joe said, I mean, I don't know if we're articulating it the right way, but the thing I do like about these commandments is they are just like little refreshers, little reminders to be like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, let's just stick to that. And, Fred Bear, I mean, he did this, he came up with these commandments, but he utilized them himself. He believed in them, and was a pretty successful hunter from the research that I've done of him. That's something that we should, it's funny whenever I get to talk it, then I'm like, oh yeah, we should do a podcast about that or something. But anyways, we should probably do like a little segment on Fred Bear and who he was and what he was, and kind of do a little research on him.
True.
a matter of fact, I'm saying that, and I'm not 100% sure if he's dead or alive, but I think he might have passed away.
Yeah, I believe he did. I can't remember when, but yeah, he passed away.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so let me get to the meat and potatoes of this whole situation here. And number 3 of the 10 commandments of hunting is always approach from downwind. In the cool of the day, move uphill. In the heat of the day, move downhill. So I think that's like one of to go off on that. I think that's like one of me and Joe's biggest things, and maybe most hunters' biggest things too, is playing the wind and working uphill, downhill stuff. It could be tricky at times, you know, to always be playing the
Right.
wind and always working the wind. And then it's a lot of fun whenever it decides to swirl on you too. So then you're just like walking in circles at that point.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, playing the wind is something that I took a lot of focus on this year. And in some ways I do think that it actually helped me with some of the close calls and successes that I had this year. I mean, I feel like it's definitely a factor.
Right. Well, that's like, it's kind of funny. Like when we talked about what topics we were going to discuss this week, and, we kind of brought up lessons learned in this season, and that kind of goes hand in hand with us doing like these Fred Bear commandments. But like, both of us on our list of things we've learned this year if you want to use playing the wind, it was on both of our lists. Like we both written down some things that we've picked.
What was that, your first one? I can't remember.
It was actually my second one.
Oh, okay. It was my first one, was playing the wind.
Yeah. So,
but it's like one of the most important things besides being caught moving, like.
Right. And like, the most off that comment of being most important and realizing how important it is. So, and I know this is no excuse, but like my whole life up until 3-4 years ago was a rifle hunter. And, I've always heard of people talking about playing the wind, but being a rifle hunter, and my technique has been more, spot and stock, where I've set up on a hill and tried to see a deer or an elk, but it never really gave the wind respect, I guess. Like I just was like, oh, there's a hill over there. I'm going to hike from here to there to that hill, and that's where I'm going to hunt. And I'm not going to respect the wind. And then like one article I've read recently was like, like one guy's like, well, I'd never really cared about the wind, and I never really seen much game. And, and me and Eric, on my opening of my hunt, we kind of experienced what the wind does firsthand. We had the wind in our favor watching the spot, and then a cow elk with a calf came in, and we had the wind in our favor, went to put a stock on it, and got into our stock about 30 yards, and the wind shifted and she took off like she knew we were there. Which she did.
Yeah. That was amazing. So I'm glad that happened early in the year with you, because that was an eye opener to me. When that happened, I was like, oh, this wind stuff, like, I mean, that's real, because
yeah, right.
Kind of paralleling with everything you said about about like hunting with rifles and stuff, and kind of doing it more from a distance. Like you don't really, well, I feel like we'll get into that, I guess, in the podcast, but I guess I'll let this go. So I feel like my rifle hunting is actually going to change because of my 1 year of experience with archery hunting.
Right.
But I'm serious though. I do feel like it's going to change a little bit. The way I rifle hunt will change the way I archery hunt.
Correct. No, for me it will too. And like with that, I think we'll just go ahead and dive
or vice versa. I think I said that backwards, but
sorry, I didn't catch that.
Or maybe I did. I don't know. I felt as soon as I got done saying it, I'm like, did I say that backwards? Anyways, the way I rifle hunt is gonna change because of the way I archery hunted this last year this last year.
Yeah. So like kind of like started our conversation into what we learned this year. I guess I didn't really think about how to go through it. We can do, so I kind of have, I guess, 3 bullet points that you want to do like every other one or something if we have time. Like I'll do one and you do one. If they're not, I'm sure some of them are going to go hand in hand and we can just kind of like bust them out the same. But
well, speaking of that though, do your number 2 first, since it's my number 1. And then I think most of our other ones are a little different.
So mine was, use the wind for your benefit. So, you're kind of given, with that being said, is the wind is kind of, there to more or less, if you can use it correctly, to help you.
Yep. Yeah. And I obviously I had the same thing for my bullet point. And I mean, like we kind of just said, I mean, we used to disregard it a little bit because we were hunting from more of a distance, or at least in our heads, we thought we'd, always be more of a distance. But getting into archery hunting definitely makes a big difference in how we hunt.
So. Right. And like, like in hunting, you're trying to put everything into your favor, kind of like how a deer, like when they bed, they're going to bed with the, how do they do it? Like with the wind blowing into their nose and then, facing downhill. So that way, like they're using all their senses for their benefit to help them stay alive. And we kind of got to destruct all their benefits and use them to our benefit to fill a tag, so it's kind of funny if you think about it that way, like they're experts on using all their senses, and they have excellent ability in their senses, like their smelling's really good, their hearing's really good, their eyesight, I don't know how well the eyesight is, I think it's decent, because they can spot you, they can pinpoint you. It seems like deer or elk, the same thing. You move a little bit, they smell you, they hear you, they pinpoint where you're coming from. And we're just trying to use all that in reverse to gain ground on them. But
well, our best sense is our eyes.
Right.
Really.
True.
I mean,
because we can smell. We can smell, but like we can't, I can't smell you 100 yards away from me.
Well, there's been a few times I thought I could smell you from 100 yards away, but
well, yeah, it's when I had a couple accidents and
no, talking about that though, I don't know if I brought it up before on the podcast. I don't know if you remember, but that time we were hunting up here in Colorado and I stopped and I'm like, oh, I smell it. I smell an elk. And then you like look down and you're like, there's a big pile of poop right there. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably what I was smelling. So I don't trust my nose.
Right. But yeah. So I guess, I don't know. I'll move on to my next bullet point, I guess, with that.
Sounds good.
And so that is, which is my number one thing. I wouldn't say my number one thing, but the first thing that I guess I learned this year was if you're not seeing sign, move areas.
Ooh, yeah, I did a lot of that this year. Actually, I actually, that was one of my main focus points was hitting areas. If I didn't see much sign or much elk or any elk, I was kind of getting on Onyx and going, well, where else can I go? And I actually did that quite a bit this year, which I don't know. I mean, you could make the argument that I think in some cases you can make the argument to maybe like keep going back to a spot, But if you're
Right.
not seeing the sign, then what's the point of going back to a spot? But saying that, next year there's some spots that I found that had quite a bit of sign in it. And I'm like, ooh, I gotta come here and like just figure out a place to like stop and hang
Right.
out behind some bushes. And because there was so much sign in a few of these areas, I was like, they're in here. I'm just not seeing them.
Right. Well,
So
that's like, for me, so like I kind of have two things with that. Is one area there was tons of I guess a sheep area. And I kind of was thinking it was elk, but then like I was like, well, this is too big of an area that's been mowed down that like, the elk herd would have to have lived here for a while to get that mowed down. And at first I was like, oh, I'm in the elk, like got all excited, but then there was no other like, there was no other elk sign. And but I kind of hunted in that area thinking I'd come. That's the area that I saw all those bulls. Like I did come across some bulls down in one canyon. Like there's like five or six bulls I came across, but no cows. And that's where I could only hunt a spike or a cow. And then the other area, my any bull area, I started hitting. I think I've learned that I gotta throw a bigger loop. Like if I'm not seeing elk sign within an area, it's like I'm not just moving a couple miles. It's like, going to be like a 15-20 mile or more move. And that's what I ended up doing my last day of the hunt, is I was almost like a 60-mile move, but then I got into them, like I didn't see any, but I had one, two, three bugles and got into wallows and fresh droppings, and scrapes and stuff. So yeah, that's my yes. Sooner, if I'm not seeing decent sign, it's time to move and not
yeah.
not spending like the whole day. Well, at least I think, unless I know the area. I know I'm not. Yeah, because it seems like I just end up like, well, if I just sit here long enough, something will come along, which is true, but I might be there for a month.
Yeah. Yeah. To have that one bull roll through
Right.
for sure.
Um,
I guess I'll go
sure.
on the next one.
Yeah.
Uh kind of parallels with what you said, actually, to a sense, is working the draws and the benches a little more, finding when you find those benches to just kind of work them a little bit and hang out for a while, especially like if you're seeing some good sign, uh,
What do you mean
utilize it.
by working the benches? Like I know you said Senton would like you like
Yeah.
calling
Well,
and stuff too, and
Colin, maybe like, I mean, sometimes those benches can be fairly big. So you might need to walk up and down them a little bit, or, just working them, trying to figure out where, um, within reason, trying to figure out where the elk may be or where they're hanging out at. But if you're not seeing much sign, then get out of there. But we're just working those draws. Here's what I'm saying is, like, earlier in the season, I was kind of up on top of the plateaus. And some of this was because I was just exploring and trying to figure out where to go. And because some of this, I was like, well, it's a little bit of a scouting game right now because I'm trying
right.
to figure out these new areas. But I was up on the plateaus. But where I had most of my success was down in the draws, down on the benches, kind of creeping through the same area that they were in. That's where most of my success came from. But every time I was up on top or in a plateau, it was hard to see much. You kind of had to be down in it
Right.
to get the action, to a sense. Even though my first morning that I went out, which was really cool. I mean, I was up on the plateau, poked my head over the side, and then I saw two cows and a calf or something like that. Like first 30 minutes of the morning, I was pretty stoked about that. I thought it was going to be a pretty fulfillful elk hunt, but And I mean, I mean, I had a good time, but this year, yeah. So from, what I learned this year, I just feel like it's, getting down in there in the benches, and the draws is will help your chances of success.
Right. No, and I agree with that. And that kind of, um, kind of goes along with my next bullet point is be in shape. And I have
Mm,
be in shape and don't use the season to get into shape. Because I kind of go into it like every year. I guess I'm young enough still that like I'm not scared to be like, out of shape and dropping into a canyon because I know I guess bullheaded enough that I'm gonna hike myself out. Now I'll say there's been a couple of canyons that I dropped into this year that I was gonna come out another side, but I didn't want to do that because it was too steep. So I had to rethink my plan. But being in shape before season starts, um, and going along with working those areas with your working the draws and the benches, like to really work them successfully, being in shape is going to help immensely.
yeah, I guess I that kind of works in with that, because I think sometimes, like, looking down in those draws and it could be kind of rugged, steep country, and if you're not in the best shape, or I mean, it could be a little intimidating because you're like, I gotta climb up out of this stuff
Yeah.
too. But so yeah, it kind of goes a lot, like it kind of goes hand in hand a little bit. And you're 100% right. I think me and Joe both suffered from it a little bit this year. Like, um I think we both were trying to do a little bit, but probably didn't take it serious enough to, be in some kind of shape before hunting season. But after we got going, I think we both got in a little better shape by the end of the season. We're running up and down the draws, pretty easily, um, but it makes it that much easier the more shape you can be in all year round. And that's something like I'm hoping that I take away this year, and I stay in better shape all year round instead of just a month before or during the season, as you said earlier.
Right. And that's like that's the one that like you try to do crossover things, and that's the one that's going to like benefit you outside of hunting too, like your whole quality of life as well, being in shape and throughout the
Oh,
whole year, not just elk season, but throughout the whole year. Like, if you stay in shape, it's gonna help you
you're
with
going to find
everything.
yourself doing more physical activities and have more fun with those physical activities. And
Right.
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think, it's one of the easiest things to neglect, because sometimes it's easier to eat Doritos and Netflix and chill than it is to go work
Yes.
out.
I'll
But
say I do love my cookies and milk or my donuts and milk. I'm not scared to put a package of Chips Ahoy into my gullet, but
I've been known to put down a few myself, so you're not alone. But me and Joe, we got a little gentleman's bet going on, and I don't know about you, but I've been
oh,
kind of horrible about checking if I'm even making any progress. But I
I've
am gonna
I've
get on it.
I don't know that I've made any progress, but the last time I checked, I've kept off like the 4 pounds I had. So I'm as far as continuing with my 3 pounds, I'm behind. So like I haven't kept up the 3 pounds, but I've kept off what I've had. So
I wish I could say I know where I would like to say that I've kept off what I had to, but I really don't know. I haven't even checked. During the hunt, well, most of the time during the day, um, I mean, I might eat a Cliff Bar or granola bar or something, but it was really weird. That's something I'm sure other hunters go through it too, but I wasn't when I was out there hiking. I mean, every once in a while I'd just be like, I need a little energy. Like
Right.
I need some energy, but I wasn't hungry.
Right.
It was kind of a weird feeling where so I'd go all day, most of the day, and I might have a Cliff Bar or two throughout the day, but then and even sometimes by the time I got to camp, I was just like, well, I did 8 or 9 miles today. I had to have burned a lot of calories. I got, like, so I'm like, I'm gonna cook this meal up, and that would be my biggest meal of the day, was the one I cooked up at camp. But yeah, I don't. It's hard to say, but I don't feel like I was getting like a ton of calories in.
Right.
But when you're out there camping though, it's the weird, like especially when you're working hard like that, it feels like you almost go further with less fuel in a weird way. Like you only need little bits of fuel to go, but then you get home and then you're like, well, I'll eat the whole fridge out, and you're like,
Right.
how come when I was camping and actually putting in all the miles, I was eating actually a lot smaller, but I get home and I want to eat the whole kitchen. I don't understand it, but
Right.
I think it's a boredom thing or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And what yeah, boredom and what you're focused on, what your mind's doing. And then I think your body kicks in and does some things too to help with that. Like, you just don't realize it when you're sitting at home. You're just like, oh, hey, I'm bored. It looks
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. Well, let's move on to the next bullet point. I think it's my turn, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right. So the next bullet point is that I wrote down that I felt had a big impact on my hunt, and I wish I would have done it earlier in the hunt. But it's not to be afraid to bugle or cow calls. I think since it was my first year archery hunting and being able to archery hunt during that during the rut, I was a little nervous to do too much bugling, thinking like, oh, I'll call in all these hunters. I was basically thinking about other hunters more than I was about my own hunt in a weird way. And looking back though, I kind of wish I would have done it, especially on the last week where everybody's saying that they're, so hot and heavy on bugling. And I was kind of, I wasn't frozen on it, but I neglected to do it, and until that last day. And then I got a little bit of action on that last day. So it definitely changed my perspective on how I was using the bugle. So
Well,
that was one thing that I felt like I learned.
yeah, then like, that's like kind of call, like it's all a whole new game like that. So I'll go ahead and like, we'll sound like this will be the end of was that your last one?
I actually have two more. So,
Okay. Well, that's my last one is using calls. And like, and not being scared to use them. And I don't know that I was scared, but kind of like like it's that whole knowing what to do when you call, 'cause I got like my last day, I just started letting bugles go. But then I just would keep bugling, and like coming to find out I probably should have stopped and throw more cow calls after I bugled. So I had one elk that just kept moving further and further and further away from me, but he kept bugling at me, but he was just checking to see where I was at.
gotcha.
But the first couple bugles, he stayed fairly close. So I feel like, if I would have just shut up on the bugle side and started cow calling, I might have had a little bit more success. But but then again, that this was the first time I've actually ever tried bugling. Like I should have been probably using cow calls more, but I don't know when do like my thing was, well, when do I use it? Do I just walk down and start cow calling? So my mind reads use calls and know when to call and what to call, or what call to use.
Well, yeah, another tricky part too is something that we both heard and a few other podcasts is not to call unless you're actually hearing elk call.
Right.
But sometimes you need to force the issue and get them moving, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes they I feel so. I think the couple things that I was fighting against was full moon and maybe the rain too, because I was during the day I'd get into all these rainstorms. So I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think the elk were kind of bedding down a little more during the day, and they weren't as active, but they'd get up at night. And that one night, middle of the night, I hearing them bugle. I wake up in my tent and I'm hearing them bugle all around me, and I'm like, oh yes, and then that next day I didn't hear anything. So yeah, I mean, all their activity was at night for whatever reason during that week. So yeah, listening to those podcasts and saying like, oh, don't bugle unless you hear them bugle. And I think that's a great advice, but kind of what I learned this year is sometimes you just got to force the issue, maybe try that for a day or two. And if you're still not getting any activity and your hunt's coming to a close, then definitely just force the issue. If you have to call in another hunter, just be like, well, I can guarantee you this, there ain't no elk around here, just me and you.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So, now you know to move ridges or
yep.
Or what?
Well, and to go off of that too, if you can utilize it in a way, I think so. If you hear a bugle from somewhat of a distance, I think it's something to at least try and hopefully work in your benefit. And if you have enough cover to do it to where you're not being seen with your movement, is to, like, when you lay out a bugle and you actually get a bugle back, is to maybe try to move closer to that elk, kind of indicating to him that you're coming in hot too, that you know what I mean? Like you're like, makes him want to come into you a little bit. Hopefully with more experience in the future and stuff, I'll test that kind of stuff out a little more and see if it works. But it's kind of an idea. I mean, I feel like I've heard that before, and I don't know. It seems like it makes sense, right? Like you can't just stay in one spot and make the elk come all the way to you, right?
Right.
Doing the 90-10 rule,
Yeah.
Or 100-0 rule,
right?
So that's all I'm saying. I mean, you might not have to move that much, just maybe 40 yards or 20 yards even, and but showing that you're making some kind of movement toward that elk might entice them to be like, oh, he's coming to, well, I'm gonna meet him halfway, like
right.
So yeah, just not to be afraid to bugle. Those my one bullet point. I'll try to get through these other ones a little fairly quick. Another thing that I learned this year, which is something that we always try to do. I think me and Joe have always tried to get away from the roads, but getting away from the roads gets you away from people. And I mean, I feel like I just saw it over and over. There was a handful of times, well, not even a handful, like literally like 2 times maybe. I saw somebody out in the woods, or in the middle of the woods, rather, away from the roads. I saw somebody else out in the woods. Most people really just don't like to get too far away from the road. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So,
right.
I think that it helps your chances whenever the further away from the road you get.
Right. Like we've said before in other podcasts too, but I mean, we'll probably always say it for the rest of our hunting careers. But like one of the things picked up on is, like elk don't like people, and, like they're going to be where they're away from people.
Yeah. And to think that they don't know that hunting season's happening when probably 90% of the time that they're in their home. There's maybe one vehicle a day that rolls through the woods there. And then on hunt season, there's 50 vehicles going all different directions, and you can hear the four-wheelers and the side-by-sides 5 miles away from,
Right.
when you get down in those draws, you can hear that stuff for a long time. And I
Yeah.
was kind of thinking about that, and I'm like, yeah, that's funny. I mean, these elk obviously ain't dumb creatures. And, when you go from a ghost town to a small city, of traffic, I mean, they know what's going on. They know more of what's going on than we want to give them credit for. So yeah, it's just, getting away from the roads, I think really kind of helps your chances. And then
Yeah.
the last one is less movement. I feel like every time that I slowed down and didn't move as much, I think with archery, you can really make this work for yourself. Like the later rifle seasons and stuff, it's a little harder because, you got to spot and stock or still hunt, I guess is the term. You're chomping through the woods and just trying to find sign and find them as fast as you can. But during archery hunt, though, you can do a little less movement and use your calls to try to entice them to come to you instead of you always trying to go to them. So, that, I don't know, because I feel like every time that I stop moving, for the most part, I would get some kind of activity once in a while. Like, you ever notice, like, whenever you're walking and you just hear your footsteps or whatever, and then you stop for like 2 minutes, and all of a sudden you hear the birds and the blah 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 blah, and you start hearing the squirrels throwing down pine cones and stuff, and you're like, how come I didn't hear that on the way in here, but as soon as I stopped, I heard it.
Yeah.
And even on one of the second to last day or third to last day, I can't remember which one, every time I would stop and just kind of sit a while, not every time, but I heard a cow go, make a call, or almost every day I would hear like one locator bugle, and then I would get, that's where I messed up, and I should have probably, been aggressive with trying to call them in and see what I could do there. But I, kind of got scared or not scared, but, I was more, I thought if I guess some of that is where I would freeze up at is I hear one locator bugle and I'm like, oh, maybe they want some action. Maybe they'll throw out another call. If they throw out one more call, I'm calling back.
Right.
And they would never throw out another call. So then I'd be like, well, maybe they're just trying to locate their cow and, go bed up for the day or whatever. And, but now looking back, I wish I would have been a little more aggressive with my calls and tried to entice, whenever I heard that locator call, to try to entice them to come do something.
Right.
Come do something about it.
Oh yeah. Those are fighting words.
Yeah. So yeah, that's all I got for my bullet points.
Yeah. Like less movement. That's like a double-edged sword. Yeah, you don't want to move too much, because that's what they're doing, is they're looking for movement and you're looking for movement, and it's almost like whoever does the less movement typically wins, because seems like they, well, at least not always in my experience, but they always seem to spot me before I spot them, because they're not moving and I'm moving.
Yeah, that's what happened to me on my second to last day. Whenever I saw that cow, I mean, I kind of wonder if if I would have known that she was there, because I was looking up in the tree. If I would have known that she was there before I looked down to her, I would have just stayed there looking up at the tree, she would have stood there a lot longer, trying to figure out what I am. Because I feel like that's whenever she moved, like she saw me and, she could have moved while I was looking up in the tree, but it was only till I moved my head and looked over at her that she was like, oh, I'm out of here.
Right. I think a lot of time, one of the things that we don't give enough credit to is like our body language. Cause I think that they can tell like when you're in stealth mode, trying to be sneaky versus just walking through the woods. Cause like I've had one instance where if I I could have just kept walking. Actually, I did. I kind of caught this cow out of the corner of my eyes, and I kept walking. I walked past, and then I backed up and looked up at her, and I stood there watching her for, a little bit till she had enough and took off. But I think if you can, catch those moments to where they don't realize you've seen them and kind of use that to your advantage at times, and just kind of keep walking, get yourself set up and walk back and go in for it. I think anyways.
Yeah. Well, you might be onto some. I definitely feel like if you had a camera, they would smile for you, but
Right.
you have a bow or a rifle and they're running, they're getting out of Dodge. So,
right.
or at least that's the way it feels sometimes. I'll tell you though, where we hunted at this last year in Utah with you, we definitely got to get some buck tags over there.
Right.
Did we ever do anything with that? I think we talked about it once.
I put some, I believe I put some up on the old Instagram, but we need to make a little video of that or something too, because those are some. No, yeah, I did put a couple pictures up, but those are some good dandy bucks.
Yeah, they're impressive.
I probably would have went after them, but I probably would have like been shaking my boots too much to really do anything to have brought one down.
Oh, there they are. That's not too bad of a picture through the old spot and scope. Oh
Yeah.
man. Yeah, if we would have had buck tags, man, would have been so cool.
Yeah. The other cool thing would have been too is
so yeah, if you want, well, speaking of though, if you want to see those pictures, go to the Struggling Hunters on Instagram at the Struggling Hunters, and you'll see the bucks that we're talking about. It's the second to last post, or the most recent post, then the second one after that.
Not the second one in the bottom of the whole pile.
But yeah. I realized this sounded a little backwards after I said that. But
yeah, go ahead.
Well, you got any more?
No, that's it. For the season, I hope that I can clue into this stuff a little quicker next year and be able to use it to my advantage.
Yeah, me too. I really feel exactly the same way. That's well, the 10th commandment will explain how I feel. I don't want to say it yet, I guess, but no, I guess I can't. Well, yeah. Should we hold it?
No, you can go ahead.
Well, the 10th commandment is pretty simple too. It says, remember that the hunt for next year starts the minute that this year is over. And so with that thought in mind, my thought is like, starting where I basically left off, right?
Right.
And then going from there. So taking the stuff that I learned, kind of getting myself in the same situation, then going from there and seeing what happens. It's kind of part of my plan for next year. So we'll go over that 10th commandment again, but it is on there on the Fred Bear commandment, but it makes logical sense, and I'm definitely using it for my next year's hunt. But with that said, I'm not fully done. I haven't gotten my tag yet, but I think I'm gonna go and see if I can't get a OTC Colorado elk tag for third season. And so as long as I can get the tag, which I think I can. I've recently been talking to other people and they said that you can. I've never exercised it before, so I've been like, I think you can. I'm a little nervous, but so I'm gonna exercise it. And so my elk hunt's not quite all the way over, but it is gonna be, my first priority is getting my deer tag filled. And then my second priority is the elk. But in the middle of trying to get my deer tag filled, if I see a nice bull elk, I'll take advantage of it. But I don't want to get caught up in trying to hunt both at the same time, then end up walking away with nothing.
Right.
So I'm going to focus on the deer and then go for the elk. And I probably won't hunt quite as hard as I did for archery, but I'll definitely be out there a little bit and, talk about those stories. So yeah, so that's my plan for the elk. So I kind of I wanted to clarify that for myself. Maybe, I don't know, that my elk season may not be completely 100% over, but for archery it is.
Gotcha.
So,
right.
But with that said, anything you want to add?
Nope, I'm good.
All right, guys. Well, again, thanks for getting through another episode with us. We appreciate all the time that you spend with us. We're, we're just blowing and going, trying to do the best we can, trying to become okay podcasters and really good hunters. And with that said, we're out of here. So have a good one.
Have a good one, guys.